Okay, so we'll be looking at the following terms and definition: asset, threat event, threat source, vulnerability, inherent risk, and residual risk. I'll quickly explain what I mean by asset. Asset is anything that has value. Asset can be technological, asset can be infrastructure, can be your servers, can be your network cables. It can also be a personnel, can also be a staff. Anything that can be assigned a value is what we call an asset. So when we're talking of threat event, a threat event is something that can lead to a risk. For example, if there's a malware, if there's a ransomware attack, malware can be the threat. The spreading of that malware from one system to another can be the event, the threat event. Then the threat source can be from a malicious user, can be from hackers. Threat source can be from malware. Now, when I'm looking at vulnerability, vulnerability is a weakness in design or weakness in control.
Sorry, what did you call threat source again?
Threat source can be the object that's causing the threat. Can be a person, can be a malicious person,
Can be something
can be an hacker.
Causing the threat.
Causing the threat. You get what I'm saying?
Mm.
So in the context of cybersecurity, can be an hacker, can be a malware. So when I'm talking of vulnerability is a weakness in design. For example, if software is badly written and there are some vulnerabilities, there may be the password is not complex enough and somebody was able to leverage on that password not being complex to hack into somebody else's account or to do a kind of a brute force attack or to get somebody's password. So that's a vulnerability. If you refuse to update your system, patch up your hardware, your software, that can be a vulnerability. You know what I'm saying? So when I'm talking of inherent risk is the risks associated when no control has been put in place. For example, to establish a financial institution is a risk anyway. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you want to go to be doing their money business is a risk. So the inherent risk is that risk, the original risk, when no control has been put in place.
Is a risk.
When in the original risk associated to when there's no any form of mitigant, you know,
mitigation plan.
So that's what we call the inherent risk. But when we're talking of residual risk is the after putting all your controls, after putting all your mitigants, the risks that still remain. For example, you can do all that you can to make sure that the risks will not utilize. For example, if application is badly designed, I can redesign the application. I can patch up my operating system, my servers. Yes, you discover that what is happening these days, even the big technology company that you think that they put in the best of the control in place, they still get hacked. Even the nations, in this case of government agency, I believe.
Yeah. Please, can you go over residual risk again?
Okay. So residual risk is the risk that still occur when you put on all the mitigant, all the control in place.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So because there are some risks that most risks cannot be entirely eliminated. But you can only reduce the effect of the risk. I don't know whether you get my point. So let me repeat again. So is the amount of risks or danger associated with an action or event after putting all your control in place. Inherent risk is a form of risk that is in place where you don't put in any control in place. You know what I'm saying? So there will always be a risk and a residual risk. So the level of risk remain after all your security controls have been put in place. So that's what we call the residual risk. So hope that's is those are the fundamental stuff that we need to. So when we are talking of the risk itself is the likelihood. So because if you want to look at the risk, you need to look at the likelihood that thing will happen, likelihood or probability of frequency of an event or occurrence. Calculation of likelihood, you also need to look at the likelihood can also be dependent on whether there is a potential threat and the extent to which the particular type of event can affect its targets. So take into account any control or countermeasure that the organization has put in place to restrict its vulnerability. Also, you also need to look at the use to calculate the risk that an organization faces based on the number of events that may occur within a given time period. So let me explain this. So when you're talking of for the fact that for every business, the way you measure the likelihood is different, and also the geographical location of a business also determine the kind of risk. No risk can be applied in every areas of life, even in a financial, even in personal life, you can use the concept of risk, and also even in building. So that's the reason why building is always good for you to do the insurance. And we have different kind of risks. For example, in some region are more prone to some natural disaster than the other. You know what I'm saying? Like in some part of the world are more prone to volcanic eruption. Meanwhile, some part of the world, you only be reading it in a book.
In the news.
In the news, or be watching it in the volcanic eruption happens. And there's some events that are happening now, like this wildfire. I know this happening in some part of the US. It's always happening in California, Hawaii. It's happening recently in Hawaii, right? Yeah. So, but there's some part of the world that's like in Nigeria now, we never experience wildfire. The only fire that happens, if you see, is a man-induced, or maybe not just a fire will just come from nowhere. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm establishing a business in Nigeria and there are some risks that I wouldn't, because the likelihood of that kind of a thing, yes, it can happen. For the fact that the wildfire has not ever happened in Nigeria doesn't mean that it never, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Then the event like tsunami, event like all this hurricane issue that normally happen in Florida, some part of the stuff. Yeah, where especially area where there is sea. In West Africa, we've not experienced this for years. Because the funniest part of it, some of these incidents might start from the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but it doesn't come to that direction. So whenever you are looking at risk, you also need to look at the likelihood. So it's also dependent on the organization. There are some organization. So just the way you determine your natural, the natural occurrence in some in some region. So the same thing in cyber security, to the nature of your business. You also determine the probability of certain kind of risk. You know what I'm saying? Like in financial organization, the risk that as customer account, the electronic fraud risk is very high in financial organization than any other organization. And in manufacturing industry, the risk that there will be distributed denial of service, that the system will be grand, that is higher in manufacturing industry than maybe let's say a standalone business that doesn't manufacture anything. So you need to look at the likelihood. So those are the things I need to look at. So this diagram, I don't know whether you can see my screen. I will use this diagram
Yes,
to
I can see.
explain the concept of risk management. Because before you can look at the risk management as a whole, you need to look at the threat source. As I've told you, threat source can be from an adversary, can also be from any persons. And you can see that if you look at this diagram right way, so there must be a threat source. Threat source can also be natural, like a natural disaster. It can also be as a result of mistake, maybe system glitches or system failure. But let's limit it to cybersecurity this time around. But I just want to use natural disaster, what you can relate with so that risk is risk in every domain, but just that each domain has a peculiar way of defining the risk. So, for example, before an organization can be compromised, there will always be a threat source. So the capability, e.g., the capability, intent, and target of the adversary. So if there is a threat source, there must be a likelihood that that risk will happen, that occurrence will happen. You get what I'm saying? Before a threat source cannot happen if there is no likelihood. Then when there is a likelihood and when there is an adversary, that's when event will be generated. You get what I'm saying? By the time an actor act on the likelihood, there will be a kind of an event. And that event, if well exploited, an event can happen, but if there is no weakness in design, if there is no vulnerability, it will not lead to adverse impact. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So vulnerability is a weakness in design. And that weakness will determine, and if you put in some controls in place, this control can limit the impact. You get what I'm saying? Like, because to be honest with you, based on what I've seen working in various financial organizations, I can tell you for free that every day, every hour, we always experience some form of attack. Because this is what I see every day, every alert that, you know what I'm saying? But what is saving us is that because we've put in some controls. An attacker might be trying to attack the organization, but if there is no vulnerability in the first place, they will not be able to come in. You know what I'm saying? But if there is a vulnerability and you've dealt with the vulnerabilities, they might not be able to come in. But the attackers, because they are evolving, they might look for a way to bypass the control that have been put in place. So that's the reason why, as a cybersecurity person, you must continually test the effectiveness of the control that have been put in place, whether it's strong enough. You can put in a control in place today. Tomorrow, the control might not be sufficient again. Like, for example, if you do data encryption, if the algorithm, an algorithm that is known to be strong today, tomorrow, you realize that it is no longer strong. So that's the reason why for your gadgets, for your phone, you always an advice that you need to patch up to update your system. It's because the new vulnerability comes up every day. New vulnerabilities evolve. So that's the reason why if you're using technology, you need to keep on patching. Patching is just the process by which you fix the security issues on your information asset. It can be on your application, devices, servers, and all of that. So this concept explained a risk. So if there is an adequate control in place and you test for the effectiveness of the control, and it might not lead to adverse impact. And if there is an adverse impact, then the impact will also determine the weight of the loss. You get what I'm saying? So whenever you are looking at the risk concept, you need to look at the likelihood, the impact of the impact. So some organization, based on their risk appetite, if a risk is crystallized, for example, last class, we are talking about what banks are put in place. For example, in United States, if customers' account is breached, maybe and it leads to financial loss, the bank will be responsible for the reimbursement of the customer and all of that. You get what I'm saying? So does that mean that because of that breach, bank will not continue business? No. But the reason why bank continue business is because that they are salvaging the risks, the impact is not higher than what the bank can bear. You get what I'm saying? So but if there is a fraud that affects the entire treasury or the entire money that is in the bank can collapse, right? So you need to look at the impact and the likelihood. So risk is a combination of impact and likelihood. And does that mean that because of a risky business, you won't do the business again? No. You need to. So risks also make us to balance things up. So this diagram is from the National Institute of Standard and Technology, NIST. So it's part of the next publication. So let's look at this scenario. A risk scenario is a description of possible event whose occurrence will have an uncertain impact on the achievement of the enterprise objective, which may be positive or negative. So these are the scenario, because whenever you're looking at the risk scenario, you need to look at the threat type. Threat type can be malicious, somebody that is intentional, that want to hack into the organization, can be accidental. If there's a weakness, somebody can accidentally do what they're not supposed to do. Maybe you want to check your account, and let's presume that before you check your account, you need to enter your account number, and you mistakenly enter somebody's account number, and you're checking somebody else's account details. Even though that is a vulnerability in any way, which is not supposed to be. So, but because it's not your intention, that can be accidental. Threat can also be in an error, can also be a failure, can be as a result of nature, can be an external requirement. Then the actor can be internal, can be a disgruntled staff, or a compromised contractor or vendor, can be an external from the competitors, like what is happening now. That's the reason why the US government, they don't trust some companies' technology, because they feel that the technology, if it's being used in the US, is going to expose some information about the US and all of that. It can be from a competitor. For example, if you set up a business, your competitor can also be an actor to cause a cyber security resource. It can also be from outsider partner regulators and all of that. So then we also need to look at the event. So the event of the risk can lead to disclosure of unwanted information, of critical information about the company. Can also cause interruption. The company will not be able to do what they're supposed to do. Can also cause modification. And also, this event can also lead to theft in the sense that maybe theft of intellectual properties, theft of financial data, and all of that can also lead to destruction, ineffective design, effective execution, rules and regulation inappropriate. So these are the different scenarios. So when you're looking at the assets, what are the assets? The people, the skills, the organization structure, the process, the infrastructure, the network, these applications, IT, infrastructure, information, and application. And also, you also need to look at the time, the duration, timing of occurrence, and also detection and the timeline before the occur, by which that occurrence happens. So let's talk about the influencing risk factor. How do you influence the risk factors? If you look at this diagram, at times there might be a risk, but if the actors is not aware of the risk, the organization, the organization will not be exposed. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying. And
how do you mean?
okay, yeah, for example, now, there may be a risk that, okay, somebody can hack into organization software, maybe the banking software, for example. But the fact that there's a vulnerability on that banking software, if the actor doesn't have the required skill set to hack into the system, the actor might not act. You get what I'm saying? And if the actor is not motivated, so motivation can form in terms of financial motivation. At times, some actor, they know that there is a vulnerability, but they will look at it, okay, if they hack into the system, what's the motivation for them? If there's no motivation. You know what I'm saying? But if there's a motivation and there's a skill, the likelihood that the actor will act is high. I hope you get about what I'm saying now.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so if there's a vulnerability on an application, if I know that, okay, this application can be hacked into, yes, but I know there's a vulnerability, but I'm looking at it, what's in for me? What's the motivation? There's no motivation. I haven't, if there is motivation, I don't have the required skill set to hack into the stuff. So, but if there is a motivation and there is skill set, the threat agent can leverage on that. The threat agents, which can be human being, can be systems, can be malware, can leverage on that threat and to make sure that will exploit the vulnerabilities if the vulnerabilities exist. You know what I'm saying? At times you may be motivated, you may have the skill set to hack into the system, but if the vulnerabilities have been dealt with, it will not make any meaning. You get what I'm saying? There must be a presence of vulnerability. So if there is a presence of vulnerability, the likelihood of that occurrence to happen increases. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's only when the vulnerability is being exploited. For example, if there's a vulnerability called maybe SQL injection, an SQL injection is a form of vulnerability that allows an attacker to gain access to the database of an application. You get what I'm saying? They can, if they gain access to the databases, they can delete information, they can update information that can lead to integrity of the data and all of that. So, but if there is no such vulnerabilities, if I'm a random attacker, I just know how to carry out the SQL exploitation, it will tantamount to nothing because nothing will happen because the vulnerability doesn't exist in the first place. So let me relate it to what we know. For example, let's presume that, okay, so your neighborhood, there are some guys that pose threat, maybe that normally maybe you have some bad guys that they don't have work, they stay around they parade your neighborhood, and those guys are not well armed anyway, and if you don't close the door, or if the door of your house is not working well, the likelihood that if you go to work, if everywhere is silent, those bad guys can leverage on the vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities are because your door is bad, or maybe your door can easily be broken. But if your door is good and you have CCTV camera around, and all of that. No, the bad guys, the likelihood that they will strike will be reduced. You get what I'm saying? So those are the kind of factor that influence the risk. The threat agents, the motivation, the skill sets, the presence of the vulnerability, you get what I'm saying, influence the risk. And when the risk crystallize, the risk is just to gain access to your assets. But this time around, we are talking about the digital asset, we are talking about the information asset. So those are the factors. There must be motivation, there must be skills.
Okay. I want to understand these influencing risk factors. There should be a motivation from attackers if they want to exploit vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah.
And what are the likely threat agents we're talking about here? Like maybe those actors you showed in the previous page.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it depends on the kind of threat. It depends on the kind of vulnerability that determines the kind of threat that comes in.
Exactly.
So it now comes to, okay, presence of vulnerabilities to exploit vulnerabilities leading to risk to assets. Okay, I think I understand it now. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the factors influencing the risk. Yeah. So there must be a vulnerability, and vulnerability can you have different kind of vulnerability. That some vulnerability can lead to exposure of data. Some vulnerability can maybe as a result of your system is not adequately patched, can lead to malware attack, can lead to, you know what I'm saying? So those are the motivation must be there. Some people, they might be financially motivated. Some people maybe politically motivated. People hack because of their political, So like what is happening for this all these state-sponsored hackers?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, the motivation might not be not necessarily finance. The motivation to get information, maybe intellectual properties. You get some motivation can be to make money. Some motivation can be to be political driven. Yes, there must be a skill set. Yes, the skill must be there. So that's why you realize that any state sponsor hackers, because they are organized, because the skill set is there, if they are determined to hack a particular target, in the long run, they might be able to do that because of the skill set. You know what I'm saying?
It's like Russia to America.
The Russia hackers, because they have the skill set. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so, or like maybe somebody that is just learning how to hack, that doesn't have the skill, even though you want to do it, you are motivated, but the skill, you have the required skill set to,
And even resources are not there.
and the resources and all of that. You may not have the enough resources, because some of these sophisticated hacking require the very good resources and all of that, right? So those are the things that you need to look at. Those are the factors that influence the risk. Then another risk is the third party. Yes, you might have put on all these various mitigants, you patch up your system, you make sure that your application is well designed, well developed, you make sure that you don't have any vulnerabilities on your application. But if you connect to third party can be your vendor, that can also be a source of risk. So as a cybersecurity professional, you must also be able to know how to manage.
Did you say a source of breach?
A source of risk.
Risk, okay.
Yeah, so you must be able to know how to manage this third party. So cybersecurity can be more difficult to control when third parties are involved, because different entities have different security cultures and risk tolerance. But let me now relate it to the banking environment. That nowadays banking, you leverage on various third party like fintech. Bank cannot operate alone. The level with difference. You might do everything that need to be done, but the third party that are connected to you, if they don't deal with the risk from the hand, can be a point of exposure. So outsourcing and mergers and acquisition can introduce security challenges. If 2, 3 organizations, merges will be one. So what you are doing, you are managing the risk, you are managing the security challenges. So this arrangement can present risks that may be difficult to quantify and potentially difficult to mitigate. So security strategy should consider all third-party arrangements with care to ensure alignment with internal cybersecurity standards. So what you need to do, if you've improved your internal cybersecurity posture, you must come up with a very robust strategy that will also address all the third-party connection. So that's the reason why PCI, you know about PCI payment card industry, come up with the various standard that, you know what, if you are an entity that deal with the card data information, you must be compliant with the PCI DSS. You must be compliant to some set of, and if you are dealing with third party, also be sure that they are compliant with the appropriate compliance certifications and all that. That will give you some form of assurance that you are not unduly exposed. So let's look at the topic 2, the common attack types and vectors. Okay, you can see my system, right? My screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at this attack, this is the cyber agent. The cyber agent can be friendly and can be hostile. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the friendly cyber agents? We are the friendly cyber agents. The security agency, the law enforcement agency, the cyber soldiers, the employee, the cybersecurity professionals, the researchers. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
These are the cyber agents. But the cyber agent, the friendly one, doesn't pose a threat. Because come to think of it, you need to have, I think according to the recent survey, that we have about 3.5 million cyber talent gap globally. You know what I'm saying? So that means that we still need more friendly cyber agents than ever before. So for the unfriendly one, if you look at the unfriendly one, we have people with low capability. Some people are not so, they don't have the required skill, the skill set. So the low capability, we have different category of people. We have the young, unskilled, cyber actors. We call them script kiddos. So these people, they are a set of people that are not so innovative. What they always do, they will just look at available exploit and how to maybe copy and paste. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They are not so sophisticated. Then we also have people that are in between. They have some skill set, but not so. So those people that do scammer, all these business email compromise. You know what I'm saying? People that send some phishing, they are not so techy, but they are in between. And then we also have the internal, the insider employer, the compromised employer. Might be your current employer, might be your former employer, internal employer that want to liaise with you can see the level of interaction. So these people can also interact. The insider people, because they don't have the required skill, they can also interact. If you look at this diagram, they can interact with an entity that want to act the organization, even though they don't have the because you are compromised, they can be like they can be like a Judas out of those 12, the 12 disciples. You get what I'm saying? So they can collaborate with some external guys or cyber terrorists if care is not taken. So that's the reason why we should not take any form of cyber agents for granted. Then we have the high skill, the high capability. So these are they have this set of people have the sophisticated.
So just a quick question.
Yeah.
We talked about the script kiddies, online social hackers, then the insider.
Yeah.
That means those are the ones that will be working inside and giving information out, right?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So we have the high tech guys. So these high tech guys, they are so technical. They are developers. They understand the technology. They have the required tools. And this high tech can be people that are being paid. So people are being paid to hack. People do hacking as a service. We have people that are socially motivated, like all those activists, because of all this, different group, like anonymous group. We have the ideology motivated, especially the cyber terrorists. They will tell you that the reason why they're hacking some agents is because they did not support something. You know what I'm saying? We're having quite a lot number of them. We have people that are even various criminal. And we also have the people that do that because of money, profit-oriented. Beyond the profit-oriented, we have the national motivated citizens, like this Russian stuff. If you see Russian attacking US, North Korea attacking one to those set of people, they're highly motivated because they also have the required skill sets and resources and all of that. So you can say that you are dealing with, as a cybersecurity professional, it's like a war zone. You are dealing with various form of hostile agents, both the low tech, the low medium, the expertise, everybody. So that's why we need to.
A quick question.
Yeah.
What can you do as an employee of an organization, and maybe you didn't know, although you have gone through training, you have known about compliance, what they are meant for, and those things you should put in place to ensure you're safeguarding the organization's information. And there's a problem, and maybe you were supposed to do your due diligence and you do not do it. Do they sack you right instantly if that causes a breach, or what happens?
Yeah, so it also depends on the culture of the organization. So that's why in cybersecurity, there's what we call due diligence and due care. Due diligence is about you knowing what you're supposed to know. Due care is that you know that, okay, there is a vulnerability